Hello, everyone. We'll just give it a few minutes as everyone's tuning in and joining the webinar, and then we'll get started. Okay, great. I think people are just trickling in, so we can go ahead and get started for tonight. Thank you all so much for joining. Tonight is the second webinar in the series, the fall-winter series of EDGE webinars. This is the one on time management EDGE, how to prioritize tasks, avoid procrastination, and stay on top of your work. So for those of you who are new here, I'm Dr. Anita. I'm an executive function coach, trained as a cognitive and developmental psychologist. I'm also a professor of psychology at Georgia Tech and founder and CEO of ZenEdge Coaching. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how to prioritize tasks, avoid procrastination, and manage your time and work. So let's jump right in. Why time management matters? That's the first big question to answer tonight. So, a lot of students today have demands on their time, and lots of them, everything from academics and extracurriculars to social pressures. And they're trying to juggle each of these things. But what I've found is that academic success isn't just about getting good grades anymore. There is actually this hidden curriculum. And one of the key factors for success is being able to manage time effectively. And learning to effectively manage time actually builds discipline, improves focus, and reduces stress in many students and working professionals as well. For neurodivergent students, we've also found that time management provides structure and can reduce feelings of overwhelm and frustration when trying to manage their workload. If you were in the last webinar, you've seen this image before of the brain. This is an image which I like to pull up because it shows where a lot of the executive function skills that I talk about are housed in the brain. They're in the frontal cortex and the prefrontal cortex in particular. And this area is considered sort of the air traffic control of the brain. A lot of the decisions and key factors are happening in this part of the brain. So these executive functions are actually mental processes that help us plan, focus our attention, remember instructions, and juggle between multiple tasks. And it's really important for students to master these skills, to do well in school, and to have that edge in particular. Interestingly, high achieving students often struggle with balancing these skills and their time because of some of the things we're going to talk about in a few minutes, but specifically, they are working towards perfection or getting overwhelmed by the amount of work they have on their plate and unable to just initiate the tasks and decide what to do first. Neurodivergent students also face challenges in managing their time and some executive function skills, and they often require tailored approaches to address the challenges. So what exactly happens when time is unmanaged? Many things can happen, but some of the most common is that procrastination occurs. As I mentioned, there's this need for perfectionism, which can delay start for many students. And a lot of times that teachers and parents will misread that as laziness, but really it's just the student fearing failure or trying so hard to get it right that they don't know how to just take that very next step to get started instead of trying to take on the entire project or review for an exam. Also, we see that when time is unmanaged, students tend to overcommit to extracurriculars or even social engagements, and that leaves little time for academics and to do well as a student. Another common challenge I found in students I work with is underestimating how long tasks take to complete. And I'll share a cool tool with you guys, the BVA tool, the budget versus actual tool later in the session. But this really helps students identify how much time it's taking them to do something versus how much time they thought it would take them to do something. Um, and a lot of times when time is unmanaged, it leads to incomplete work and missed deadlines. And it's something that could have easily been addressed, but students' grades suffer or they have a lack of motivation because they are not able to do the things that they're aiming to do, that they're capable of doing in the set amount of time that they have. Let's talk about the power of prioritization. So there are so many different ways to prioritize tasks, but the key is to try to prioritize them based on two factors, the urgency of the task and the importance of the task. This has by far been the best method for myself as well to figure out what to do with my running to-do list. And I typically do two things for my to-do list. I have a note on my phone that has the 5 days of the work week and the weekends listed, and then a section that's unscheduled and unscheduled tasks. And I try to put each of the tasks I'm trying to do for the week in on a certain day. And I also try to put them on a calendar. I prefer Google Calendar. It's free, it's available, it's user friendly. So some tools like that are really great. If you just like the traditional to-do list on paper or pen, that's fine too. One of the students I've worked with, I put her example here. She loved sticky notes and she loved color coding things. So she bought 3 color sticky notes and she created her own system for her to-dos. And she would put a sticky note on each of her assignments to say, okay, if it's an urgent task, I'll put a blue sticky note on it. If it can wait and second priority, I'll put a yellow sticky note on it. And then if it's something that doesn't need to be scheduled immediately, I will put an orange sticky note on it. So she really color coded her tasks, and that worked really great for her. Another simple method is if you have worksheets or assignments that you just have printouts of, you can just stack them in the order that you need to get them done as a student. So based on deadlines, importance, urgency, put the most important one on top and the one that can wait the longest at the bottom of the stack, and just work your way through over the course of a certain number of days or hours. And my personal favorite also is a matrice. It's the Eisenhower decision matrix, which I'll show you on the next slide. And that's a really great tool to try to get into the habit of using, and you can do that on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or a monthly basis. Some other tips for prioritizing are to use reminders and alarms to support your working memory. Working memory can only store so much information, so it's best to just take it out of your brain and put it down on paper or calendarize it. And that way you're not taking up space in your brain, reminding yourself about the things you need to get done. And you can use that memory capacity to do the work you need to do. So again, these reminders can be set up on your phone or even in the Google Calendar notification systems. You can set timers on your phone and alarms with labels on them to help you get going and get your deadlines achieved. Reverse engineering deadlines is another great way to prioritize tasks. So looking at all the things you need to do in a given amount of time, whether that's a weekly view or a monthly view, and then working backwards. That's that reverse engineering, working backwards and saying, okay, what do I need to get done first? Because it will take me the longest or it's due the soonest, and breaking those tasks down further. So here's that Eisenhower decision matrix I was mentioning. And if you were in the last webinar, I shared this as well, and it's in the most recent newsletter for the Zen Moment newsletter. So you can go there and download this Eisenhower decision matrix completely free. But the way to use it is to just list out one task per box on the left-hand side here. And then you'll delegate each of those tasks, you'll assign them to one of these four quadrants. And along the y-axis here, this vertical, we see important and not important. And along the x-axis, this horizontal, we see the urgent and non-urgent work that needs to be done. And you'll find each task from the left and place it in one of these four boxes in the matrices on the right based on how urgent and how important the task is. So for example, if you have an exam coming up as a student, then that's pretty important, and it might even be urgent because it's coming up in a week or so. So that's something you would put in the do column, like reviewing for that exam. If it's something that's not important and not urgent, you can put it in the delete column. But if it's actually important and not urgent, you can decide when to do it. You should schedule it for a later time and date. And the fourth category is to delegate things, if you can, to someone else if it's not important but it is urgent to do. And so, again, this is a great tool to use on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or a monthly basis, even depending on how many tasks you have to get done, or on terms of a project basis as well. Okay, so again, you can download that from the latest Zen Moment newsletter if you're interested. So what are some of the common challenges I've seen with managing time? There are lots, and I didn't even put all of them on this slide. But some of the ones I'd highlight are that their student is spending too much time on less critical tasks and too little time on important tasks. They start to feel emotionally overwhelmed as deadlines approach, and they have rushed their work because they haven't allocated enough time to getting the work done. As I mentioned, many students are struggling with perfectionism, and they forget about tasks if they don't document them or have a system to get each of their assignments done. And these students are managing several classes and extracurriculars and demanding schedules. So it's easy to miss a task or two, especially ones that have multiple parts to them. You can see some of the other challenges here as well. And if you have encountered any in your child or your student, please do share as well in the chat so we can understand some of the challenges that our students are facing collectively. Okay, so how to avoid procrastination. One of the most interesting laws I've come across in my research has been the Parkinson's law. And it's the notion that work expands to fill the time available to complete it. What does that mean? That means that if I give myself 2 weeks to do something, I'll most likely use 2 weeks to do it. And if I give myself 2 hours to do something, I'll try to get it done in 2 hours and maybe even accomplish that, depending on how much time I have to do something. One of the world's leaders, Steve Jobs, was really famous for setting up very ambitious tasks for his teams, something that would take others estimating 8 months to do something. He would say, let's try to do it in 24 hours. And their team would get it done in 24 hours instead of 8 months, just because of that time that they had put there as available to complete the task. So that's not required for a lot of the things we end up doing on a day-to-day basis, but it's really important to avoid procrastination by breaking down large tasks into smaller, achievable steps. So with a lot of my students, I like to share this deep work Zen moment cycle. And deep work is a great concept where, you get into this flow state of working and you avoid as many distractions as possible, but then you also have a break after a certain amount of time. And you can schedule these as long as you need. I like to suggest that the deep work is for 40 to 50 minutes of time so that you can really accomplish something. And then you take a 10 to 15 minute break. That break should be something unrelated to the task you're trying to accomplish. So take a break, get up, go for a walk, grab a snack or a drink, or phone a friend real quick and see how things are going, but keep it to just 10 to 15 minutes. And then you repeat that and you do another cycle of deep work and Zen moment. And you can do 2 or 3 of those in a day and accomplish a lot more than if you set out to say, okay, today is Saturday and I'm going to work all day long on catching up on things. It's also really important to create routines that make time management more predictable and less overwhelming, especially for tasks that you do repeatedly. And students have a lot of tasks that they do repeatedly, such as quizzes and exams and projects that they have to get done. So really, it's important to have a good routine for that. What are some strategies for managing time and work? Of course, it's really important to know, first of all, what you need to work on. But this is really important because you don't want to waste time thinking about what you need to get done when you actually have found the motivation to work. At that moment, it shouldn't be a matter of, okay, let me think of all the things I need to do and which one I should do first, and which one I'll do next, and how long it's going to take me, and what materials I need. Have all that ready to go so that you're not wasting time as a student figuring out what you need to do. Some other techniques your students or your children might like. A popular one is the Pomodoro technique. A Pomodoro means apple, and you can see that pictured on the left. And it's a short timer, 25, 30, 45 minutes. They come in different ranges. And typically the timer is set for 25 minutes, a deep work session again, and then you take a 5-minute break, start again, 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. And once you've done 2 or 3 of those 25-minute, 5-minute cycles, you take a longer break. This has been really effective because a student can just keep this physical timer on their desk, set it, and then watch and see like how much longer they need to work on this task. So again, like other visual timers, they're readily available online or in stores. You can see them pictured here. They come in a lot of varieties, but that visual cue helps students know that you don't have to work on this forever, but try to work on it for a set amount of time before taking a break. 2 more strategies that I love to share with my students and clients are SMART goals and time blocking. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound goals. They're not just lofty goals like review for the exam. They're goals that are more attainable and achievable because you've outlined exactly what needs to get done. So a SMART goal for reviewing for an exam might be, I will study and review chapters 1, 2, and 3 for 40 minutes this week over the course of the week. And then on Friday, I will take a practice quiz to see how I do. And that really lays a good outline out for what to do for preparing for the exam, not just that you'll study. Another great one is time blocking. You can see this is like a week in a student's life. They're waking up consistently at 7 a.m. and having breakfast at 7:30 a.m., Monday to Friday, going to school for several hours, and then including chunks of time for rest and mindful practices, for studying, for extracurriculars, and for time with family and friends. But they can see very clearly from this visual where the blocks of time are that are available to do other activities or to engage in more relaxation or mindful practices or add on something. If someone asks the student, hey, are you free at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday? They can just check and see, actually, I'm not free. How about Saturday at 5 o'clock instead? So time blocking really helps quickly see where time is available and where time is already filled. And in today's world, there are a lot of digital tools for managing time as well. I mentioned Google Calendar as a personal favorite. Some of the clients I work with also love Todoist and Trello boards to manage their projects and their task lists. Recently, a lot of them brought to my attention 2 apps called Forest and Flora, and these are actually to limit distractions. So these are phone apps that can be started to try to stay off your phone while trying to get some work done. So both have a similar concept where student turns on a timer and when they want to focus on some work, and then either a plant grows or a tree is growing somewhere. And the goal is to keep that tree or plant growing or that flower growing as long as you stay off your phone and avoid the distractions. Otherwise, the plant or the tree will die. So it's a little bit of a gamification, but it's been showing great results for some of the students I work with. So definitely check it out. I'm not affiliated with any of these tools. I just wanted to share some that have come up in my conversations with students. And the images on the right are from those Forest and Flora apps. Okay, so for the Zen Edge, that's really that piece that's mindfulness and how you can improve outcomes by focusing on mindful practices and taking a step back to regulate emotions and reduce the overwhelm that's often caused by time pressures. So I like to share these 5 techniques. We don't have time to get into them in too much detail today, but mindful breathing is a great way to do that anytime, anywhere. You can just stop, pause, and take a deep breath. Inhale, exhale very slowly. There's also a great technique called box breathing, which many of you may have heard of. You inhale for 4 counts. You hold your breath for 4 counts. You exhale for 4 counts, and you hold the exhale for 4 counts. So it forms a box, a 4x4 box. Another great tool, which you can do anywhere really as well, is a body scan meditation. This one, I just encourage students to close their eyes. Ideally, you do it laying down in a relaxed position, but it can be done sitting up or standing up as well. And you just close your eyes, and from head to toe, focus your breath on different parts of your body as you move through it, and try to identify where the tension is and breathe into that tension to try to relieve it. And again, it's more focusing on the breath and taking the time to slow down and stretch where needed. Single task focus is another great technique where it's very difficult to multitask. In fact, we often are not multitasking. When we think we are, we're switching very rapidly between tasks. And there's a lag period between that task switching and residue that's left from the previous task. So it takes time to switch between tasks. It's really important to focus on one at a time to really maximize your time and get the best results possible. Some of the most high achieving students I work with love to journal. And this is very open to interpretation. Journaling can be anything from jotting down bullet points to full on narratives and writing letters to yourself. So a lot of them practice journaling throughout the day, but particularly at night or in the morning, at the start or the ends of the day, bookending the day that way. And then having mindful transitions. So not just going from task to task, but to have deliberate breaks in between and practicing, some breathing in between in the hallways, between classes, or getting up and walking around, adding movement into your day before switching to the next task. That's also really important. So I just wanted to share some of these techniques that have worked well for students. And again, each student is different. So one technique may be really well liked by one and not by another, but it's good to try out different ones and see what ends up helping you achieve optimal performance. Also, this is a popular series in the webinars. It's a day in the life of a Zen Edge client. And what I do is I ask the students I work with, particularly ones that I'm working on the topic with, to help their skills, what they have done after working with me or talking to me and in our coaching sessions. So this is Elijah. I spoke with him. He was struggling with time management, and I asked him, okay, so what techniques and strategies have you started to employ? What mindful practices? And so he was really excited to share, and I'm just summarizing here what he does on a typical basis, but of course, every day looks different. In the morning, he says he likes to begin the day by reviewing his now time block calendar. And he spends about 5 minutes then writing down 1 to 3 things that he wants to accomplish that day to consider it to be a well-managed day. So he's not trying to accomplish everything in one day. He's just choosing 1, 2, or 3 things that he's like, if I get this done, I will say I accomplished what I wanted to for the day. It was a good, productive day, and I managed it well. And he can clearly look at his time block calendar to see when he can accomplish those things for that day. In the afternoon, he's often in school. On the weekdays, he's in school at least. And so he uses his academic strategies that we talk about, like listing the to-do items down and then calendarizing them into his calendar. And then adding important tasks and deadlines so that he doesn't miss them. That was a challenge for Elijah. And then he likes to practice mindful breathing to increase his focus and calm his mind down throughout the school days. A lot of times before starting a class or a topic, he would feel a little anxious. So he would just try to focus on his breathing. And he would say, like, nobody around me noticed. I was just taking a few extra breaths consciously, mindfully, and it really helped me with my focus. And then after school in the evening, try to think about the big picture on certain days when he has a big task coming up or a big project, and he tries to break that down into achievable steps. He likes the Pomodoro technique. He keeps one on his desk, and he tries to do those deep work Zen moment cycles. He'll do like 2 to 3 of them, he was telling me. So I just want to share some things from a student perspective on what's worked. And you can see he's incorporated a lot after working together. But every day looks a little different for Elijah as well. Okay, so I mentioned the coaching session. So a lot of parents often ask me, like, what exactly is involved in a coaching session? And I'll just share like the outline of what I do and my approach. It's a 50-minute session. I typically meet with students once a week. And we meet for several sessions to actually start to see some behavior change or some benefits after connecting and going through the different strategies and skills that they're trying to work on. But you can see the breakdown here. Typically spend about 5 minutes at the start reconnecting. How's the student doing? What's their current mental state? Catching up on activities and events that have happened in their life since the last meeting, focusing on some things that they mentioned that were important and upcoming for them. Then we revisit some of the plans and commitments that were made during the previous session. We document those things so we can reflect on them and see how much progress is being made. And we plan for about 10 minutes after that to prioritize anything that's upcoming. I ask them what's going on, what activities, what tasks, what projects are on your plate. Let's figure out when we're going to do them, how long it's going to take you, when you're going to get started on them if you haven't already. And then we practice applying the skills that we talk about for that given student. So if time management is a challenge for the student, we practice the skills that I was just mentioning on this webinar and focus on how to manage time better, for example. And then we have a 10-minute mindful moment. We talk about what was accomplished during the session, the coaching session, and then even practice some breath work or movement in the session, and then focus at the end on what's next, what the student wants to commit to work on until we meet the following week. So if you're interested in a coaching session or considering it at all, I'm happy to meet with you. You can schedule a complimentary call with me through the website. It's completely free and no obligation, but I just wanted to lay out what's typically going on in a session so you get a better idea. Okay, and another great tool you can check out on the website, zenedgecoaching.com, is the student baseline assessment. This is under the services tab, but you'll also see a pop-up once you visit the website. And this is a great tool. It takes about 20 minutes the series of questions for your student or your student and you to answer about their executive function skills, their academic strategies, and their mental and mindful practices that they're already using currently. And so it gives a good outline of what the current state is and where we can focus on some strategies and skills to enhance performance. So this is also completely free. And then once you have completed the student baseline assessment, I generate a report and we can discuss it on the free consultation call so that we can see what would be a good plan of action for your student to go ahead and improve their skills. Okay, so we've come to the end of the presentation, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to answer some questions and answers. I do have some questions that have come in through the registration, so I can address those. But if there's any questions you have during the presentation, you can certainly put those in the chat or the Q&A feature. And let me see if any have come in yet. Yeah, feel free to post your questions. Until then, I'll answer some of the questions that came in during registration because I think they're frequently asked questions as well around time management. One question a parent asks is, what can I do as a parent to support my child's time management skills? It's a great question. So the best way, and you've heard this in other areas of parenting as well, is to model good behavior and show your child how to prioritize tasks. If they see you managing your time well, or talking about time and the importance of sticking to a schedule or budgeting a certain amount of time, then they too will learn to do that. I definitely would encourage you to manage your time and your students' time by showcasing how to do it effectively. Another question that came in was, how can my child balance schoolwork with extracurricular activities? Yeah, definitely, I would again say time blocking is a winner here. It can help them allocate time for both schoolwork and for extracurriculars, and they can clearly see where they have pockets of time to do both and not have scheduling conflicts. They'll definitely appreciate that and try to start with like a weekly view if a monthly view is too too much to take on. But week by week, you can see, okay, Monday to Fridays look like this, the weekends look like that, etc. Okay, I see some questions in the chat, so I'll just go there real quick. There we go. How many times do you recommend meeting for coaching? Okay, yeah, great question. Thank you. So coaching sessions, it's very hard to say a set number of coaching sessions, but definitely we try to break it down and see where the student is at. That student baseline assessment is a really great tool for me to know where your student's at right now. And from there, at least a few sessions will be required. You can always start with just one and see how that goes, but you cannot see behavior change so quickly. So I definitely recommend at least a semester working together before you'll start to see some progress on the skills, given the students also putting in the work. Okay, Arjun asks, my child tends to underestimate how long tasks will take. How can they improve their time estimation? Yes. Okay, I was going to mention the BVA tool, which I will do now. Thank you, Arjun. Actually, that's the budgeted versus actual time tool. And I love this one because oftentimes we underestimate as adults to how much time a task is going to take. So when your student has a task, especially one that they have to do often, um, have them, before they get started, estimate how long they think it's going to take them to complete the task. And they should write that down somewhere. Tell them you have to write it down. Like, is it going to take you 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour? Give it your best guess. And then have the student start working on the task. Have your child, when they're ready to start working, set a timer and say, okay, let's see how long it takes you to actually do it. They should work at their normal speed, not try to rush it or go slower. but have them put the time on and see what exactly is the amount of time needed to complete this task. And then report that number right next to their estimated number. And initially, they'll might see a discrepancy or they might have guessed really well, but have them do that a few times every time they do that same task in the same conditions and see, okay, on average, how long is it taking them to complete the task? And after a few times of doing that, your student and your child should be able to notice a pattern and say, okay, I thought this task takes me 20 minutes to do, but really it takes me 40 minutes. So I need to be budgeting more time in my day to do this task whenever it comes up. Great question. Thank you, Arjun. Okay, and Imran asks, my child does a lot of task switching, going from one thing to another without finishing any one task. Would coaching help? Yes, definitely. I've seen this with lots of students where they're switching between tasks. Sometimes that's beneficial, but you have to reach a good stopping point to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, there is no real such thing as multitasking. Your brain is only doing one task at a time. You're actually just switching rapidly back and forth. So there is a cost to doing that, an opportunity cost, a delay cost, where you're switching back and forth and your mind is still processing what you were just working on and simultaneously trying to prepare mentally to switch to the next task. So it's best to focus on one task to a point of completion or to a good stopping point, and then encourage your child to move on to the next task. And if they're getting overwhelmed working on one task, I would actually suggest they take a mindful moment, a Zen moment, and practice some breathing or movement or take a break so that they can reduce those feelings of anxiety. Okay, great questions. Let's see if there's any more. Okay, don't see any more in the chat. I'll take one more question from the registration, one that I see a lot of parents ask me. Um, and that is, how do we deal with last minute cramming before project deadlines and exams? So again, I would say for this one, you definitely want to encourage your child to plan ahead. Studying for exams or quizzes or completing major projects like you would at work, they take long periods of time. And often the student knows when the deadlines are. So again, reverse engineer from there, break it down. There's no reason you need to be reading 3 chapters or one whole chapter if your children are younger before an exam. You can certainly break it down, and we have spaced interval techniques as well, which show that memory retention is better when students review the material frequently rather than just once. It might be fresh in their mind, but it won't be in their long-term memory, which will actually help them recall things on an exam, or they won't actually understand the material as well if they're trying to rush and do a project. They might miss some components as well. Okay, great. So I think that's all for the Q&A for tonight. I'll just double check. Yeah. But as a special gift for attending this webinar, I did want to offer all attendees $50 off their first session. You can use the code time managed 24, and that's good through September 30th, 2024. So again, I encourage you to check out the website, zenedgecoaching.com. You'll be able to find all the details on the coaching plans there. A few other resources. I'm doing these webinars once a month. They're completely free, covering different topics each month. So the next one is on conquering stress, balancing academics, extracurriculars, and personal activities. That's going to be on October 8th at 8 p.m. online as well. So the same way you registered for this one, you can register for that one as well. Zen Edge Coaching is also on Instagram, so I'd encourage you to go check out our page there. There are some great tools and tips and visuals, also good reminders about upcoming webinars on the Instagram page. And then if you're interested in more long format articles, I do write a blog on the website. You can get to the blog, Zen Edge blog, which has some more information and best practices on extra executive function skills and mindful practices and the strategies that help students perform at their best. And we also have the Zen Moment newsletter, which you can subscribe to. That's hosted on the Substack platform, but you can get to that from the website as well. And all of you will be getting a copy of the newsletter for free after the webinar, where I'll share a link to this replay in case you want to watch it again, or if you want to jot something down that you may have missed earlier. But I encourage you to visit the website, zenedgecoaching.com, or you can also send me a message directly at anita@zenedgecoaching.com if you have any questions. And that's it for tonight. So thank you again for joining. I hope you'll be able to join the next webinar in October. Have a great evening.